everybody here for our last morning. I think it's been a wonderful week already, and we have one full day left to go. Our first speaker this morning is Jacques Lascar, who probably needs no introduction and apparently is even more famous this morning.
Thanks. So thanks again to the organizer of CELMEC, which is a very special event. And yesterday I told you that I had some special arrangement with the Pope for making very nice weather during the soccer game. But he didn't tell me about the drawback of this arrangement. So now I know. Okay. Today I will speak of something that is not really new, but the recent development is new, about AMD stability and the classification of planetary systems, which is some way to try to see if a system is stable or not without making huge numerical simulation. And the reason for that is we have plenty now of planetary system, and we need to know very quickly if the system needs to make further studies to look for its stability or not. So we want, this tool will not cure everything, it will not cure cancer, it will not do everything. But in many cases, it will allow you to see rapidly the kind of system you are with. If it is a system that is stable without any question, or whether you need to look more deeply. And this is some work which is joined with my PhD student, Antoine Petit, who will make a presentation of part of it this afternoon, and Gwenaël Bouy. And we have two papers that are now in astronomy and astrophysics. They are just in the forthcoming. So all the detail, you can look to them. In fact, in 2000, I published this paper where AMD was expressed in a quite AMD's angular momentum deficit. And it was focused on the spacing some way to construct planetary system and to have law for the final planetary system based on the angular momentum deficit. And I published it in a physical review letter, as I thought might be of interest also for physicists. But it was a 4-page paper, and I wrote, technical detail and proof will be presented elsewhere. And I put as a reference a paper to be published. The paper was written, but basically it stayed in my drawer for 17 years. So that's for various reasons. So now this is really this paper and something more that I am publishing and working on now. What is the origin of that? These are the evolution of the eccentricity for some of the planets, Mercury, the Earth, Mars, and Jupiter. This is over 20 million years. And most of the variation is due to the linear secular coupling. And if you look to the top here, it will not move that much. Here it moves a little bit more. And so this you understand by the linear coupling. But now if you go for a longer time, like here, in this picture, I just put the maximum value. So you see for Jupiter, like here, maximum value will be a straight line. So for all the outer planets, maximum value are straight line. And for the other one, you have some significant change. And these change are only due to the chaotic diffusion. And the question is what you see here. Mars has quite large variation, Mercury even more, and Venus and the Earth less. And the question is why? Why the diffusion of Mars is larger than the diffusion of Venus? Why the diffusion of Mercury is larger than the diffusion of Mars? So this is the first question I want to answer. And to do that, I will go to Zen celestial mechanics. So, what is Zen celestial mechanics? Zen celestial mechanics is simple. It is with no numerical integration. So I believe most of the talk here were not Zen celestial mechanics. Some of them. No computation of series expansion. This suppressed part of the thing. And remove all the unnecessary. And forget the dynamics. That's it. So this is what we want to do. So this is just to find the skeleton of the dynamics, you know. That will be given by, essentially by invariance, or pseudo-invariance. Okay, so we need to start with the planetary Hamiltonian. Don't tell me it's not that simple. This is the, this is the planetary Hamiltonian. You just write in barycentric coordinates, you have the kinetic energy, the potential energy, and then you go to canonical heliocentric variable, just go with reference to the sun, and then you separate your system into the Keplerian part and the perturbation, which is the perturbation here. For the Keplerian part here, we take the Keplerian part. You have plenty of choice for the Keplerian part. You can consider a two-body problem of sun and the planet, but here we consider a fixed sun, because that's in order to, here everything will be rigorous, everything will be demonstrated. So in order to do that, sometimes you have to put yourself in a condition that are less close to the physical problem, but which simplify the mathematical treatment. Here, to simplify the mathematical treatment, I want to have the gravitational constant mu the same for all the planets. So I take G m0 and the perturbation. And now, what is the angular momentum deficit? You have to look to the angular momentum expressed in heliocentric coordinate. The good thing is that the angular momentum is just the sum of the angular momentum of each orbit, of each Keplerian orbit. So you have just the sum of the Keplerian angular momentum. And so, of course, the angular momentum is constant. So the normal component of the angular momentum is constant. And you see here, I have the same constant for all the planets. And what is the angular momentum deficit? It is just the circular angular momentum. The circular angular momentum is the angular momentum when you put eccentricity equals 0 and inclination equals 0. So it's the sum of the lambda k. Sum of the lambda k minus the angular momentum, and it gives this quantity. Why this quantity is interesting? It's interesting because if you look to the canonical variables that are conjugate to the longitude of perihelion and longitude of node, they are this quantity, and the angular momentum expressed, the normal component of the angular momentum expressed in a very simple manner with respect to the lambda k, the variable related to the semi-major axis, and these two canonical variables. And what is the angular momentum deficit? It's just the sum of these minus this. So basically, you remove like that the lambda k, and you keep only this part. So why doing that? In fact, because we are looking in secular evolution. Secular evolution, you average over the mean motion. In this case, in the new Hamiltonian, the semi-major axis is constant. So here, we have something that is constant, but each lambda k is constant in the secular equation. So this is a constant, it's a first integral of the secular equation. And the good thing is that this is basically the sum of the square of the eccentricity plus the sum of the square of the inclination. So it's a sum of positive constant, which means that each is smaller than the sum. And in this case, you have a bound for the eccentricity. The eccentricity is bounded by the angular momentum deficit divided by this quantity, which is the mass square root of A. And like that, you see that the smaller a body is, the less bounded it will be. If it is big, there is a bound on the eccentricity. If it is small, there is no bound on the eccentricity. And if you look now to the solar system, you see here how is distributed the angular momentum. So the biggest part is a circular angular momentum. But this is constant. We don't care about it. And then for the planets, you have the thing related to eccentricity, inclination, and most of it is in the outer planets. If I were to put the total angular momentum deficit and look to the bound on the inner planet, I will find the not significant bound. It will be 1 or bigger than that. But the thing is that as the outer planet is regular, in fact, the inner planet, the idea is that the inner planets are chaotic and have exchanged among them the angular momentum deficit of the inner planet. And in this case, you take as value of the angular momentum deficit the value provided by the inner planet, only from the inner planet. Then you get bound that give you this limit. And you see the small planets are less bounded than the big planet. And it gives you a clear explanation of why it is like that. So it means that in this motion, practically, the chaotic motion of the inner planet is such that the planets are not bounded by their dynamics, they are just bounded by this invariant. Okay, that's one thing. Now, we want to go beyond that, and we will look to AMD stability. So the thing will be this, and all these two assertions can be perfectly demonstrated. All the details are in the paper. So this integral is constant. It's an integral in the average system at all order of averaging. So it's not just first order, it keeps the same form at all order of averaging, and it's an integral at all order of averaging with respect to the mean longitude. And the second thing is the AMD decrease at collision. I can show you rapidly why I will detail the second part. It decreases at collision. What do you mean by collision? I mean inelastic collision, totally inelastic collision. So you have a first orbit, M1, a second orbit, M2. They collide here and make M3. And we have conservation of the mass and conservation of the momentum. as the location is the same, you have the conservation of the angular momentum. That's the first thing, conservation of the angular momentum. What about the energy? We look to the Keplerian energy. Keplerian energy is minus mu m over 2a. And we will look to what is the evolution of the energy. We will look to the evolution of the potential energy, of the Keplerian potential energy, and of the Keplerian kinetic energy. If you look to the potential energy, R is always the same because we are at the same location, and you have conservation of the potential energy because you have conservation of the mass. If you look to the kinetic energy, you just compute the difference of kinetic energy and you write it down and you find that it is negative. So you always have a decrease of kinetic energy. So in total, a decrease of the Keplerian energy. Now we will write it in terms of A. We have thus 1 over A3 smaller than m over A1 plus 1 minus m over A2, where m is the ratio of the mass m1 over m3. And now, we're just saying that the function 1 over square root of x is a decreasing and convex function. As it is decreasing, you take this inequality, and it gives the inequality in the same thing in the reverse way for f. But now f, this now we use convexity, and f of m over a1 plus 1 minus m over a2 will be smaller than m f over 1 over a1 plus 1 minus f over a2. And now you have just to express this in what it gives. And it gives exactly m3 square root of a3 smaller than m1 square root of a1 plus m2 square root of a2. And as we have the same mu for all the planets, it converts immediately in the relation on the circular angular momentum. So this shows that the AMD is decreasing at collision. And it's rigorous. But it's rigorous only if you put yourself in this variable. So, we want now to speak of stability. And stability is whether you can get collision or not. So what we do is we take a system with plenty of planets, we don't care, and we will look when two planets can collide. You take it in space, and you look to the limit condition where the two planets can collide, and you want to bound it. So the idea is to collide, one eccentricity has to get large in order to collide with the next planet. Because we are here, we consider ourselves in a secular system. We don't change the semi-major axis. So in order, as we know that the AMD bound the total square of eccentricity and inclination, in order to get the larger value of the eccentricity for a pair of planets, you will have, the limit condition is when you put all the AMD in just this pair. And even when you are with just this pair, the limit condition will be obtained when you put all the AMD in the planar problem. So you put yourself in the most easy condition for collision. So even if the problem is with n planets in space, to look to the collision condition, you just have to consider two planets in the plane. In this case, this is what is written here. It's the collision condition. So the collision condition is just that the perihelion of one here is equal to the aphelion of the inner one. And here, this is the conservation of the AMD for the two planets. So we have to solve this system of equation. You can just go to the relative variable to simplify a little bit. And we have this collision condition. So what is this? This is just a straight line in the eccentricity prime. And this is roughly an ellipsoid here. And we look to the minimal value which allow collision. Which means we have to solve for the tangency condition here when you are tangent, which means that the gradients are proportional. It's like Lagrange multipliers, and this allows to eliminate one of the eccentricity, and you end up with an equation with a single variable. Alpha and gamma are the ratio of semi-major axis and ratio of masses. These are given quantities. So here we just want to know what is the solution of this. This will give the critical eccentricity, which gives the limit condition for collision. So just look a little bit this equation. It's a very nice equation because it is increasing with respect to E. So you have an increasing function. The value in 0 is negative, the value in 1 is positive. So you know you have a single root always for this solution. And also the value in E0, which is the intersection here, is also positive. So the collision equation has a single solution in the interval 0, minimum of 1 and E0. And you can find it easily with any mean of searching for root equation. So this gives you the solution. We can also look to what is this critical AMD value and to look to this function depending on alpha. You see, so this is we look here to the critical AMD, which is the minimal value of the AMD that is necessary for collision. If you are below this value, you cannot get collision. If you are above, you can get collision. It's given in an implicit way, but there are some value for which you can get you can write it down, and you know that it's increasing with gamma and it's decreasing with alpha. So it's always a curve that has this shape. So now we can make our criterion. It's very easy. You take a planetary system, you compute the total AMD of the system, and then you compute the critical AMD for each pair of planets. If the AMD is smaller than the critical AMD, the system is stable. You cannot have collision. So then we call beta will be the AMD stability coefficient, which is just the ratio of the two. If beta is smaller than 1, no collision are possible. The problem, and we also consider collision with the star. In this case, you take the 1 is equal to, the critical AMD is equal to 1, and you can write down the value of beta. In an exoplanetary system, very often you don't know the inclination of the system. You have a degeneracy with respect to sign of I. But here it's not really a problem because we are concerned only with the ratio of the masses. So if you have two, as the inclination are supposed to be still roughly the same, the sign of I will cancel. And you don't need to know the inclination of the system. It will give you the same result. So you can just compute the AMD stability coefficient like that. The other problem is there are very few systems for which we know the precise inclination. So we know the eccentricity in some of the systems, but not the inclination. So we will assume for the computation an equipartition of the AMD in eccentricity and in inclination. So in order to make the computation, we compute the eccentric, the planar AMD with the knowledge of the eccentricity, and we will take as beta the twice of the value to take into account the inclination. We look like that to all planetary systems available. And there were only 131 with known parameters, sufficiently well-known parameters, so we can make this study. And then we can distinguish the strong stable system. These are the systems for which all AMD all beta are smaller than 1, so no collision is possible. No collision are possible, neither with a star, neither planetary collision. Then we call weak stable the one for which the collision of a planet with a star is possible, but no planetary collision are possible. And then the AMD unstable system are the other one. So these are the output. So these are the stable system. You know the color is the value of the beta coefficient. When it's blue, it's stable. When it's red, it's unstable. So these are all the AMD stable system. When you have an AMD stable system, you know that no collision is possible. There is no need to make numerical integration over a long time. You can do it over a short time to see that if there is resonance or not, but most probably if it is here, it means that it is stable over a short time. But this will give you, without making any computation, the fact that the system is stable over a billion of years. In the sense, it can be chaotic. It can be chaotic, but there will be no collision. Collisions are impossible. These are the systems, the weakly stable system, where the first planet can collide with the star. It doesn't mean that it will collide. It just means that you need to make more, then you need to look more carefully to take into account the dynamics. And there are the system, the unstable system. Unstable systems are these where planetary collisions are possible. Again, it doesn't tell you that there will be collision. It tells you that you need to look more carefully to the dynamics. But you see, it like that, very quickly, you know which system have a potential problem and for which things are granted. And if you look here, this is the solar system. So the solar system is an unstable, AMD unstable. And this we know, because particularly I know, because I showed that the Mercury can collide with Jupiter. But this is a special case of system. You see, it's a system with two parts. And we include an additional category, which is the hierarchic planetary AMD stable system. It's a system when, if you divide the system by 2, ensemble, you get separately stable system. If you separate the system between the big planet and the inner planet, both are stable. So, and this is what is already known, but here, you see, if you take only the big planet, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, then you know from this that there cannot be collision. And if you consider that you have only exchange of AMD among the inner planets, despite it is chaotic, you cannot have collision. So when do you get a collision, for example, of Mercury with Venus, or Mercury with the Earth? You get it when you can catch some AMD from the outer planet to put it in the inner planet system. And this, you can do it through a secular resonance. So then this is what occurs. When we can do that, it's because we go and fetch a little through the resonance of the perihelion of Mercury with the perihelion of Jupiter. We transfer some AMD to the inner planet, and then we can destabilize the inner planet. So this is this gives you a theorem of stability for the Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune system. you see all the beta coefficients for this system are smaller than 1. So the Jupyter system is AMD stable in the sense that you can state a theorem. The Jupyter-Saturn-Uranus system is stable in the sense that no collisions are possible in the secular system at all order of averaging. And you can do that without any real computation. Apart from this, which is just small calculus. Now, I want to finish with not so then celestial mechanics. Because the previous part was when you take the average system, and you know that you can average only where you are not in mean motion resonance. So when you don't have overlap of mean motion resonance. But there are some parts where you have some mean motion resonance, and it's in particularly close to the planet location. You have overlap of mean motion resonance. And this is what we have considered in a recent paper, and most of the work was done by Antoine Petit, who is here, and who will talk this afternoon about that. It is not so then celestial mechanics in the sense that it is more complicated. You see, you have all, this is from Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus system. You see, you have all this mean motion resonance, and in particular, here, this is a collision region. So in the previous case, we were looking only to the collision line here, but you have all this place here with overlap of mean motion resonance. So not so then celestial mechanics, it's less simple. This is why you need fresh blood to work on it. And you need to make some series expansion. So we look to overlap of mean motion resonance. This has been worked on. There are two series of considerations that have been done. One is for zero eccentricity, and there is some overlap criterion that has been given in the circular case by Wisdom and by DEC, and which give a formula for the estimate of the overlap of resonance here, where epsilon is the ratio of the mass to. And there is another criterion which is given for large eccentricity, and which has been given in a restricted case by Mestil and Wyatt, and by DEC et al. In the planetary case. The idea here was to have something more general, something that will not be restricted to some approximation, and this is what Antoine did, and Antoine was able to obtain a formula, an expression that is valid for all eccentricity and all semi-major axis. And this expression, so it's expressed in terms of something that is related to the AMD of each planet here. And just to show you, and to have all the detail, you will have to watch the presentation of Antoine Petit this afternoon. But just to show you what it gives, these are all the resonance, the first order mean motion resonance. The blue line is the collision line. This is basically semi-major axis, and this is AMD or eccentricity, inclination, something like that. This is the circular limit case. This is the high eccentricity limit case. And this is a curve obtained by Antoine, you see, which, this is logarithmic, but it goes to the same value. In fact, you recover exactly the limit case, but with an expression that is general and that exists for all values. Once you get that, you want to adapt the AMD collision criteria, and this is what you do here. You take the critical AMD curve, and you look to the condition given by this new mean motion resonance criterion, and you see that, of course, this criteria will affect only the part where alpha is close to 1. You see, just because of that, when alpha is not close to 1, the collision condition occurs before the overlap of the resonance here. So, analytically, you will change the condition only here, and in all the example you are looking for, giving some ratio of semi-major axis and value of the masses, this is a place where it's the collision, the previous condition, the previous criteria that was applied, and the new one, taking into consideration the mean motion resonance, is really effective only in this small area. So we have, with respect to the previous thing, which was, it's only had some difference in a small area, but still is important. And we can look to all the systems we have been considering. These are all the systems in a alpha epsilon. So this is semi-major axis, and this is ratio of the mass. And you see, this is with the collision condition, so the previous the strict AMD, and this is with the new criteria. If you look, you will see that, so the only difference is here, and you see that it will increase, of course. See the dot, they will go a little bit more red, because of course the bound is lower. So that's the, it gives, and I am finished. Now we're finished. So just to say, it's my last transparency. You know, the last one is here, but it's my last transparency. It's just to say that, you see what is important is that this AMD criteria written in the very rigorous case of previously, without any expansion, without any numerical simulation, gives already the backbone of everything. When we go beyond that, taking into account the mean motion resonance, we still, with some expansion, but with still rigorous computation, we add a little bit, and it gives a very clear picture of the whole thing. So thanks for all, and I will take your questions.
When you describe your condition for collision, you were somehow implicitly assuming that up to the moment of collision, the two planets almost don't interact, don't change their orbits. Why I'm saying that? Because
yes.
if you consider, well, it's well known for comets encountering Jupiter, but probably this can be extended to the three-body problem, general one, that when the orbits are traveling together at very low relative speed, then even if the affiliate of the inner one is half an astronomical unit or even more, less than the perihelion of the other one, you can still have a close encounter that can lead to a collision. So this could be...
Yes, of course. You are right. Here you are describing a case where the two will have similar semi-major axes. Similar semi-major axes. So you will be in the case of this mean motion overlap. You are in a place where there is a lot of chaos. And it's true that the picture, the picture here at the beginning, you know, with this picture here. Yeah, here it's a simplified picture where you have some orbit, you look at the orbit, and you just look before and after collision. And the orbit, the semi-major axis, for example, do not evolve in between collision. So it's true that it's not in reality, it's more complicated. But just what I want to say is that this still gives the backbone of a lot of things.
How sensitive is the AMD stability criterion to the possible presence of additional planets?
Of course, what happens if you add an additional planet? If you add an additional planet, you will increase the total AMD of the system. So you will increase So then, if the total AMD is increased, you increase the beta coefficient. So in this sense, can have some system that was previously stable that become unstable. But it's the same thing with numerical integration. You know, if you have an additional planet, you need to do again all the heavy long time numerical integration to know what will be the outcome. Just what I say here is that in many cases you will not, if you find that it is still AMD stable, you don't need to do any numerical integration to know that the system is stable forever.
The criterion guarantees no collisions. But what about possible planetary escapes?
Yes, it's no collision, but escape is not possible because here, you see, it's. So you mean semi-major axis going to, what does it mean? Going to large value or eccentricity going beyond 1. So,
You see the near collision.
yeah, near collision. I think.
For example, the Sydney problem, there's no collision.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, in fact, I think maybe we need to look a little bit more closely to really answer this question. I've not looked precisely to whether we can constrain this as well, because here we look to really collision, and it's in a, you know, the idea is it's always different when you try to do things that are rigorously mathematically proven and things that are just numerical simulation or just some heuristic physical statement. So I think we need to look more closely to that.
thank you.
May I make a short comment?
Short.
I would like to make a long comment. But a short comment is so the idea, the main idea of such a approach is the idea of Lyapunov, because this C is a function of Lyapunov. But to make a reference to French scientists, I would like to add that this is found by Lagrange and Laplace. And in reality, they found the Lyapunov function before Lyapunov. First. Second, this C conserves in any approximation, you say, and not only in any approximation, but after truncation also. So this function is conserved when we truncate the series. And third, adding that two others, you do not use two others components of such a vector. They conserve also. It was demonstrated by Kuznetsov and a little bit by me, but they conserve badly. They conserve if we average this function precisely. But if we truncate our series, in such case, these two components do not conserve. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.